The Buffalo Bills surprised a lot of people in 2020 when they went from a wildcard exit in 2019 to an AFC Championship, win multiple playoff games in the same postseason team in 2020. A lot of this was due to the progression and major leaps Josh Allen took as a player from his second to his third season, and a lot can be attributed to the acquisition of star receiver Stefon Diggs. They took a big leap as a team this past year and were knocking on the door of a Super Bowl appearance. Now that they're more than established, though, come increased expectations from everyone, from fans, from the media, from players, and from the front office. How can the Bills take the next step and get over the hump and roadblock that is the Kansas City Chiefs? We're going to break down how their draft should go, which positions they should attack, and players they should go after given the opportunity. How they attract the draft will largely, though not solely, determine how they do in 2021, as rookie impact is critical to a team's success, and we saw that in 2020 with the Super Bowl champion Bucs having a franchise cornerstone of a tackle in Tristan Wirfs and a player who made big plays in the postseason in Antoine Winfield Jr. Now, before we get started and dive into the Bills draft guide, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as each only take a second to do and it would be very much appreciated. Now let's begin. Now, this has been a little bit of a series with NFL teams draft guides, and today we are stopping in Buffalo to discuss the Bills Mafia and to discuss their needs and potential new players in the upcoming draft. So, when we look at this roster and discuss the needs, there's really not a whole lot, as they were one of the final teams in 2020 for a reason, one of the final four. They have a franchise quarterback, one of the best receivers in the NFL, a true shutdown corner, and a good tackle in Deion Dawkins. But one area they do lack in is pass rush. Buffalo finished 27th in the NFL in hurry percentage in 2020, and that is not a recipe for success long term. They need a pass rusher, and while this isn't necessarily an overwhelmingly strong draft class for that, they can get good value at 30th overall, which is where they select now. Jalen Phillips from the University of Miami would be a great addition if they can get him here, or even if they had to trade up a little bit in the draft to acquire him. What I do want to say about the Bills draft and their game plan going into the draft is and this is obviously assuming Josh Allen doesn't have a season-ending injury or anything crazy foreseen like that, will be a great team again, and there's no reason they can't go to back-to-back AFC Championship games. I'm not saying the road there will be a cakewalk by any means, but on paper they will be better than the Dolphins, Jets, and Patriots, and should have no problems winning their division. They would then host a playoff game with fans, at least we assume at this point in time, with a full capacity of fans, and they would not lose a home playoff game, at least not the first one, with all of that momentum and the crowd on their side. It's just not going to happen. So how does all of that relate and bring us back to the topic of today's video, which is the Buffalo Bills draft guide? Well, it does in the sense of the Bills are in a great position and they know it. They have several key pieces on the roster that teams would kill to have, which means they can gamble a bit in the draft and trade up and down accordingly. If there's a prospect starting to fall that they absolutely love into the early 20s, then they can definitely make that trade and not really think twice about it. Whereas a team that needs to win now, such as the Chicago Bears at pick 20, may not trade out of their pick because they're going to need the best player available at any point to save their current GM and head coach's job. So I do expect Buffalo to be aggressive in the pursuit of any player they draft or target, since they have the luxury to be able to do so. Now, an edge rusher like Kwity Paye will be gone long before they pick, and while I do think Buffalo will be aggressive in this draft, I do not think they will be overly aggressive to the point where they would be trading multiple first-round picks to trade up to get an edge rusher like Kwity, for example. He has been mocked to teams like the Vikings, and the move from 30 to 14, where the Vikings select, or even 15 or 16, would be Buffalo's 2021 first-round pick, 30th overall, and their 2022 first-round pick, and I do not think that is something Buffalo would be willing to do or willing to part ways with. And the reason it would be both picks, not just their first this year and maybe a future two or even a two this year, is every other team in the NFL knows how good they are and knows that their first-round pick next year will be near what it is now, and that is basically a second-round pick. So while Buffalo won't be able to get a player like Kwity Paye, they could get someone like Jalen Phillips from Miami, who should be a stud in his own rights. Now, just being honest, there is a possibility even Jalen Phillips will be gone by the time Buffalo selects at 30, and that's okay because they are not solely locked into drafting a pass rusher in the first round, and no matter what. This is a good draft class, and there is plenty of other options they could go with when the time comes. One option, and we have to discuss him, and is one of my favorite players in the draft, and that is Alabama's Najee Harris. Najee was a Heisman finalist this past year and finished his college career with 57 total touchdowns, 50 of which came in the last 2 years. Now, whether you are Devin Singletary or Zach Moss's biggest supporter, the reality is the talent may be too good for Buffalo to pass up if he's here when they are on the clock. And there is a good chance he is because a lot of teams leading up to Buffalo don't need a running back or simply wouldn't take Najee, not due to his talent or lack of, but because they may prefer Travis Etienne over him. The Jets are a candidate to take a running back with their second first-round pick, and that could be a landing spot for Etienne. The Steelers are also a landing spot for a running back, but they also need to address their offensive line, so I wouldn't count on Najee landing in Pittsburgh either. This leaves a very good shot of him being there at pick 30, and when you need 4 to 5 yards per carry in the late December playoff games of January, there is no better back than Najee Harris to Buffalo in this entire draft. I recognize the investment in Zach Moss last year and get why Bills fans may not want Najee, with more pressing needs on the roster at the moment, but when he rushes for 120 yards and a touchdown in December or in a playoff game in January, I don't think any of Bills Mafia would be complaining about this draft pick if Najee is indeed the guy. And if Buffalo exits Thursday night at the draft, the first round of the 2021 draft, with either Najee Harris or Jalen Phillips, then they leave as round 1 winners. Now we have to dive into more than just the first round of the draft, as the NFL draft is more than just a Thursday night in late April. In addition to pick 30, they have picks in rounds 2, 3, 2 in round 5, 1 in 6, and 1 in 7. They do not have a 4th round pick due to the Stefon Diggs trade, and I think that is 100% okay with Bills fans, is not having this pick and having it be a part of a trade to get their favorite receiver since at least Stevie Johnson, and if not Stevie Johnson, Eric Moulds or Hall of Famer Andre Reed. A player I'd love for the Bills to be able to get is a player in the secondary, and that is Asante Samuel Jr. Now, he is obviously the son of former Patriots corner Asante Samuel, and like a lot of players we've seen recently, meaning sons of former NFL players, they have a lot of good NFL traits, and it's almost like they've been watching their whole life, and that they've been listening to their dad preach to them their whole life about instincts and everything else in between. Pairing Asante Samuel with Tre'Davious White would be a nasty corner duo, and if the Bills come out of the draft with Najee Harris and Asante Samuel Jr. or Jalen Phillips and Asante Samuel, then they would have to be pleased with this turnout no matter what happens the rest of the way. I do want to let you guys know something, and this is more of a harsh reality about an NFL draft than anything. We of course want the best for players, and especially day 3 players that have high upside or what we think is very high potential, but the reality is, if a team gets 2 starters, then most of the time it is a successful draft class, long term that is, not necessarily starting 6 games here and considering them a starter, because that really isn't the case. If a team gets something absurd like 3 or 4, then it is a very good draft class, and is in discussion for best of the decade. So we can't expect Buffalo to come in to get 3, 4, or 6 starters from this class and be this brand new team because, well, it's not a reality. Now, 2 starters is good for a draft class, and of course a team like the Jags will probably get more than that this year, but again, they are selecting number 1 overall for a reason, and even if they do get more than 2 starters this draft, it depends on the quality in those players. When looking at great draft classes over the past decade, there is almost no better class than the ones the Saints had in 2017. They drafted 2 rookies of the year, the offensive and the defensive, in corner Marshawn Lattimore and Alvin Kamara, then drafted 3-time All-Pro and probably more in tackle Ryan Ramczyk, and then safety Marcus Williams, who is franchise tagged this past offseason. The reason I bring them up is because we are discussing draft classes and what to expect from teams, and this type of class is certainly an outlier and by absolutely no means normal. And this is by no means the standard for a team like Buffalo, who only has 3 top 100 picks and, for that matter, 3 top 150 picks. So while Buffalo can improve their team throughout the 2021 draft, I just don't want anyone going in with unrealistic expectations, thinking they're going to go from an AFC Championship game appearance team to a 20-0 now with a 17-game schedule Super Bowl champion team, because that simply will not be the case. So heading into the draft, their priorities in order should be 1, pass rusher, and tied for second is a number 2 corner and interior offensive line, and after that is a bit of a toss-up because there are not a lot of holes on this roster. I do think they'll address receiver in either the 6th or 7th round because this is a deep receiving class, and after this year they will be thin at receiver, so better to be a year ahead of a need than a year behind. Not to say receiver is a top priority because it is not, I said the 6th or 7th round, but Cole Beasley is getting up there in age and Emmanuel Sanders is also, and he is also on a 1-year deal. I love the potential of 2020 4th round pick Gabriel Davis and think he will do very well in the future, but they will need a 3rd guy after him and Diggs in 2022, and that is the reason I think they take a stab late at a receiver in this draft. Pass rush is the number 1 need for this team, and there is no doubt about it. Now, we will eventually do draft grades for every team in every division, and I am certainly eager to see how GM Brandon Beane attacks this draft and how they game plan towards it in a few short weeks. Now, as I was finishing recording this video, the Bills signed guard Forrest lamp, and good for them, but that definitely does not take away the need to add interior offensive line. Remember, if Forrest was that good, the Chargers would have done something else to sign him, and that's really all there is to it. They should still draft there, assuming it is decent value relative to where they are selecting, and do what they can to protect Josh Allen to block, and for whichever running back starts for them in 2021. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have a great day. Love you guys. Deuces. Peace.